I saw a set of eyes, and they were amber and fiery, but loving at the same time.
Stop it. I know you probably can't see me well, but I have tears in my eyes. So, whoa. Okay. I got to get a tissue. Hold on. Life is like a roller coaster, but it's better when we go through it together. Welcome to the Candace Cameron Bure Podcast Christmas Special. My guest today was born in India. She grew up at a British school in Dubai, and then she moved to Chicago. Aarti Sequiera is an amazing cook who's all over the Food Network, and she has lived a pretty incredible life. She lives in North Carolina with her husband and 2 girls, and she just released her second cookbook called Unwind, which is actually 50 devotionals and recipes together. Before Aarti won season 6 of Food Network Star, she had her own YouTube cooking show, and she was a CNN producer who produced a documentary with George Clooney. What? I want to hear about that. This Christmas season, I'm asking people to share about how giving has changed their lives, and I can't wait for you to hear from Aarti.
Access more.
Aarti, welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for being
so
here.
Excited. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
I'm so happy to talk to you. We have, by the way, you look beautiful and you look so festive, and I love your earrings, and thanks for bringing the Christmas spirit.
I had to. Oh my gosh, I love it. Red's my favorite color, probably, apart from yellow.
Ooh, mine's green.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I can see that.
Yeah.
I'm actually doing the thing where they're getting my colors. You know what I mean? Like
Are
the spring,
you?
autumn. Mm-hmm. I'm so excited.
I feel like I know this has been around for a really long time, but I have a lot of friends who are doing this now. So I feel like it's coming back in a bigger, trendy way. And I've thought about it, but I also work with a really great stylist, Erin Noel.
I know.
And so I feel like we know what colors work well for me, but then I have FOMO, and I'm like, maybe I should get my colors done because everyone's getting their colors done.
I'm just curious. I don't know. I've always loved personality quizzes,
Me
the
too.
things in the magazines,
Yes.
and so I think it's just another one of those.
Okay. After you get it done, share your experience. I want to know all the things.
I will. I knew you'd be into it.
Yeah, I totally am. I way am. So just for everybody watching and listening, we know each other. We've met, but we haven't had a lot of time in person together, but we've talked on the phone. We've talked on socials, and we're both Jesus girls. And I think that was like the instant connection. We also have some mutual friends and people that we work with together that are in common. But I'm just was like very happy to be your new friend.
I think especially in this world of entertainment, right?
Yes.
When you find someone in this world that is also defining their lives by the same thing that you're defining your life by,
yes,
it's so helpful because it feels like there's like a shortcut in conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? We're like starting from the same point. We're working towards the same end goal. And so things that don't bother other people bother us, and things that bother other people don't bother us.
Yeah.
And so it's almost topsy-turvy. And I think is for me has always been the connection about finding believers in this entertainment business.
Yeah, absolutely. There's also this is so random, but you met my best friend, Dillany, a long time ago because every year you would come and do Taste of the Nations in Los Angeles, and she put on that show. She kind of ran it. And I remember she had met you and talked about you, but we didn't really know each other well way back then. And then randomly, it was like the week before her wedding, or maybe the day of her wedding. I don't remember, but she pocket dialed you.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I forgot about that. Yes.
She pocket dialed you, and she remembers she just heard this little tiny voice was like, hello, hello. And she was like, oh my gosh, who is that? Realized she called someone on her phone. And I don't think you guys knew each other that well. You had met a few times and it had probably been 5 or 6 years. And here she randomly pocket dialed you, and she was like, hey, this is Dillany.
I mean, there's just been a lot of, it's funny when you finally meet somebody and then you look back and there were all these breadcrumbs along the way.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we were just meant to be friends.
100%.
Well, I would love for you to take us all the way back because I would love to hear how you grew up and really your whole backstory because it's quite fascinating hearing it and then knowing where you are today.
Yeah. Well, so I was born in India, but I grew up in Dubai. And back then, Dubai was not, this sprawling, super modern metropolis that it is now. And so my parents were already there, but my mom was like, I'm the oldest. I was the first baby. So she went back to India to have me so she could be around family, do all the traditional things, that mums do when they have babies in India, like be taken care of for an entire month, which is how it should be. She did nothing. She had someone to come and give her massages, cook for her, massage me, bathe me. Like every day someone would come and do that for her.
That's normal in India?
That's normal. Yeah, girl.
I had no idea.
I know. When I told her after I had my first child and I told her that I was bouncing back to work, she was like, your grandmother is rolling over in her grave because that's not how we do things.
Oh my goodness.
There's just this real veneration of that time and everything that a mother has been through and has ahead of her. And
wow.
So, anyway, so my mom definitely did that
I'm
with
like,
me.
I want to redo childbirth right now. And then
I know.
Like, hey, can I have some of that extra special attention, please?
Redo. But so she had me and then she came back to Dubai and, my last name, Sequiera, is Portuguese because the part of India I'm from was part of the Portuguese Empire. And so the story goes that my ancestors were Hindu and Father Sequiera, or I guess they would have pronounced it Sequiera, introduced them to Christianity and they converted and took on his name. That's the story. Okay. And one day I'll figure out if that's true.
Okay.
So my family is historically Catholic. And so that meant that food in India is so huge because you can really tell someone's faith based on what they eat for lunch. Because if they're a very devout Hindu, there's going to be absolutely no beef, absolutely no meat of any kind, really, depending on how strict they are. Some of them may eat no garlic, no onions either. So I'd be like, oh, you must be Hindu, or, someone who's having lunch and not eating pork. Well, are you Muslim? And then someone who's eating all the things is probably Christian. So
fascinating.
Yeah. And so I grew up very much sort of connecting with my identity as an Indian Catholic, as a Mangalorean. The part of India I'm from is called Mangalore, through what we ate. I don't speak the language that well, but I speak the language of food real well.
Yes.
And that was how, when we would go back home to visit family, the thing that would always make those barriers of not having seen each other for a few years disappear was that when my grandmother would put the pork curry down on the table, I knew, you know what I mean? Oh, yes. I was like, oh my gosh, you made sar patel. And then everybody would be like, oh yeah, she's one of us. Come on in, you're fine. That was always such a huge, huge part of my life. But as a Indian family, as I'm sure, Delaney has told you, there are specific careers and vocations that we go after because they provide, right? So doctor, lawyer, accountant, engineer, all those things. And so my parents were pretty open-minded when I said, well, I don't really want to do any of those things, but I just watched CNN for the first time. And the reason that I had watched it is because the first Gulf War was happening pretty much in our backyard, right? And that was the first time I'd seen real journalism. Because everything I'd seen previous to that had been sort of local, like ripping off the wires and reading it. And that's kind of what turned me on to journalism and kind of just opened my eyes to what that could be. And that then I just sort of set my whole sights on, my dad said, you're going to go to America for university because that's a country where, you can really build something for yourself. And so I was like, all right, that's what we're going to do. We're going to go to America and study journalism.
So how did you end up working with CNN and producing a movie with George Clooney? This is like left turn, hello, from what we know you from.
I know. So I was so excited. So I went to Northwestern and I studied journalism and I was just obsessed. I was totally dorky about it, just like every other journalism person at school. And then a couple of weeks before I graduated, I had interned at CNN the summer before, and they said, hey, there's a job. Would you like it? And I was like, well, that was easy. Because everything I had heard about getting into the news business was this is going to be tough. You're going to have to, hustle to get in there. And so I was like, great. Yeah, absolutely. So I started, lowest on the totem pole and kind of worked my way up. And so I started working in Chicago. At the time, my boyfriend, Brendan, wanted to be an actor. He is an actor. And so he was like, well, I always said I'm going to LA. So we were long distance for like 4 years. And along that time, I was doing better and better. And I got promoted and I got to work in New York. I got to move to New York and work there. And everything was going great. You know what I mean? My career track was very, very clear. I knew where I was going. And then when I got married, I decided, well, I'm going to move to LA to be with Brendan because news is everywhere, right? And I'll just keep working for CNN in LA. Oh, naive little Aarti. Oh, sweet little lady. That did not happen.
Okay.
Yeah. As soon I told them, and they were like, well, we don't have any jobs for you in LA, unfortunately, because we're laying people off. So love you. Bye. And that was so tough.
And so you just accepted that?
Yeah. I mean, there was nothing I could do. I just assumed, well, I'll get to LA and I'll just go find another job because there's no way I'm not getting married and there's no way I'm going to start my married life long distance.
Right.
I've already done it for 4 years.
Right.
Enough already. So I moved to LA and I was looking for work and I was having a really hard time. And honestly, in retrospect, I can see God's fingerprints all over it because there were jobs where, Candace, I was literally doing the job. I was doing the job. I was a freelancer. I was in that position. Everybody in the newsroom was like, oh, this job is yours. It's going to be yours. How amazing. You're going to get the benefits, blah, blah, blah. And then boom, door closed. Someone came out of a completely different bureau and took that job. And I was like, it was so crazy. And I knew I was good at it, but it just wasn't happening.
God was shutting the doors.
He was shutting the doors. And so that was happening at the same time as, Bren and I were newlyweds and he has been a Christian since he was annoying, he says, teenager. And, I was brought up Catholic, but it was never, it wasn't alive for me. I didn't I wouldn't have said I follow Jesus with my whole heart.
Yeah. And
at that point,
I don't want to backtrack, but I do for a second, because I am very curious how your faith played out growing up in a Middle Eastern country. And even with Catholic parents, Hindus, Muslims around, and knowing how strong your faith is today, I also want to hear that journey.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it was never that strong. It was always very strong for my mom. She wanted to be a nun. She goes, then I met your dad.
That's really cute.
So it was, I know. And so, it was being Catholic was a huge part of our identity. It marked the holidays that we celebrated, the things that we ate, the when we went to church, getting first Holy Communion, getting confirmed, going to Sunday school, all of those things were a huge part of my growing up.
Yeah.
But it never felt that real to me. It really did feel like a statue up on the wall. And the way that I interpreted what was being taught was God as a very sort of far off, intimidating father figure, who was all powerful, all knowing, but not necessarily all loving. It was sort of all imposing, and sort of waiting for me to make a mistake and to go, see, I told you. You know what I mean? I told you not to do that. Look at what happened. And so, of course, once I got to college, then, I mean, my mom tried dude, she tried. We got there and we went to the Catholic church, and she immediately went up to the worship leader and was like, my daughter plays piano. She would love to play.
God bless your mom.
I know, she tried. But I walked away from it so quickly because there was no relationship there to keep me.
Yeah.
You know, and meanwhile, I was falling in love with this guy, Brendan. There was my relationship. And thank God he was a Christian, right? So we would have these conversations and I'd be like, what do you mean you don't worship Mary?
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And then I would say, well, what do you mean by grace? What does that mean?
Oh.
You know, you could lead this whole life of doing whatever you want. And then all of a sudden you decide that you believe Jesus and then boom, you get to go to heaven. And Bren was like, yeah, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, obviously it's more complicated than that. If anybody's listening, I'm happy to talk to you about it.
Yeah, but this is going to be enlightening for a lot of people listening, because I know that there are so many new believers that are just stepping in, or maybe come from different backgrounds and even Catholic backgrounds that haven't experienced the relationship part with Jesus. So keep speaking a word. Keep going.
Okay. So the grace thing was really a hard one for me to swallow. I think because I'm an achiever and I really like the brownie point system because I'm really good at it. And so the idea that wasn't how God worked was, I was like, well, I don't get this at all.
This is why we're friends.
Yes.
Because we're just one and the same. Okay, keep going.
I know. I see you.
Yeah,
I recognize my own.
Totally.
So, you know, we go all through university and still not really going to church, still having lots of conversations about it. My husband was still a Christian. And then when we graduated, he went to LA. I stayed in Chicago. I think I walked even further away. But there would be moments where I'd be walking around on a Sunday and something would call me into a church and I would go and I would attend a service and I would just sob. And I didn't know why. Something was just breaking inside of me, or something was longing for what was on offer there at church, but I couldn't put words to it. And, you know, if you had asked me back then, what are you? I'd say, well, I'm Catholic. But it wasn't real. I can't put it any other way. There was no flesh and blood to it.
Born and raised Catholic. That was the way, but there wasn't.
It was like I had
personal
card. I had the card that said I was.
Yeah.
Right. So then once we got married and I moved to LA, we started looking for a church because we were like, we want this to be part of our lives. And we went to a few different ones. And then we ended up at a vineyard on the west side of LA. And we just stayed there. And what's ironic about that, Candace, is that my roommate in college, we had a bunch of friends in college who went to a vineyard. Vineyard was very active at Northwestern. And I was like, what is it with these vineyard people? They are so happy all the ding dang time. I just couldn't understand it. They were always singing and laughing. And then guess what? You know, I walk into this vineyard and it's the polar opposite of a Catholic service, or at least the ones I'd gone to, in that, you know, there's arms up in the air, there's people dancing, there's like a lot of sort of spirit-led movement and speaking and all this stuff. And I was like, whoa. But for some reason, I didn't run away from it. And we stayed. And part of it was that the pastor there, Brad Bailey, who's still there, spoke about Jesus in this way where I could actually imagine him sitting next to me.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like a real person.
Yes.
And he put it in terms that made such sense to me and made him seem, rather than a statue up on a cross, a real man who was also God, sitting right next to me, talking to me, who knew everything about me, that cared deeply about me, and that wanted the best for me and was not out to get me.
Right.
That was completely opposite than what I had grown up believing. And so I remember one day, and I loved the worship. I love music, and I just loved the worship. And I remember one day during worship, I would sing my heart out. I sing harmony. I do it all. And something was like, shh, stop it. And I was like, oh, okay. So I closed my eyes and I just I bowed my head, I remember, and I felt a presence walk down the aisle, come and stand in front of me. And I saw a set of eyes, and they were amber and fiery, but loving at the same time.
Stop it.
I did. And I was like, and he put his hands on my shoulders, one on each shoulder, and looked me right in the eye. And he didn't say anything, but it was just this sense of like, I see you. I know you. I'm proud of you. I know everything. I know all the things, even the things you haven't told Brendan. I know them all. And I love you anyway. And I'm proud of you anyway. Oh my gosh, that was it. I was done. I got baptized in 3 months and it was over. Yeah.
I know you probably can't see me well, but I have tears in my eyes because that I get really emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Just with the Spirit and when God speaks. So, whoa, okay, I got to get a tissue. Hold on. I get really sensitive to God.
I love
and the Holy Spirit. I do. And I don't mean to be a big old crybaby on my podcast, but I feel like I just cry every day. But that moves me. And I'm like jealous for that experience that you had. And that's incredible. Yeah. And not everyone has that kind of experience. I certainly haven't seen those amber eyes. I certainly felt the presence of God.
Yeah.
And I know when he's speaking to me, but it hasn't ever looked that way in my life. And that's what's so amazing about him is he speaks in all different ways to us. And I'm so glad you got that experience.
Yeah. I think sometimes, I've been listening to a lot of testimonies recently. I feel like that's so encouraging when you hear people's testimonies and the things that they used to do and believe and how God broke it and turned them completely around.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I cannot wait to hear Kat Von D's testimony. Like, literally sitting on the edge of my seat.
No kidding.
So excited.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes when I've been listening to some of these testimonies, sometimes I feel like the deeper and the more stubborn and maybe the more lost that people are, the more dramatically God has to show up. Like I think about my husband's testimony and I don't remember all the details. I would never tell his story. But one of the things that he's a very intelligent, stubborn person. So am I. I'll say it now before he says I didn't say it. And so he kind of needed a moment of Jesus being like, hey, you think you're so hot. Did you remember this, and this, and this that you did? That you think you're so awesome? I saw all those things. And he was like, whoa. And he needed sort of a harder word from God to sort of turn him around. I think, but for me, I needed a really soft, warm place to land because I'd had plenty of the hard stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he spoke to me that way because he was like, I can tell you're just like torturing yourself and that's not what I want for you.
No. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing just a little bit of your husband's testimony too. I love that. And I want to encourage everyone watching and listening that you have a testimony. So many people think that they don't because if they're like, oh, I didn't feel someone walking down the aisle. Right. They think they don't have a testimony, and you do. No matter how small you think that story is, it's significant. And God works so differently in each of our lives. And your testimony is going to relate to someone, and my testimony will relate to someone else. And your testimony, it goes around, and it's so important that we share. So thank you for sharing and encouraging the listening of testimonies.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, I always thought that my testimony was not anything to talk about.
What?
And I know.
You have an incredible testimony.
But that's the thing, right? Like, wouldn't that be if there is an enemy of our souls?
And there is.
But let's just,
yes, there is.
What?
Yeah,
for
wouldn't
those
it be
of you
just
who
like
aren't
him?
Quite sure. Yeah. To want us to just go, oh, that wasn't a big deal.
It.
Don't talk about it.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So So you are living for Jesus. Totally different in that it is very real and tangible and interactive. That's how I like to call it. That's what relationship is. Because I talk to a lot of people that come from the same background that you were in, and they're like, I want that. I want what you have.
Yes.
How do you know God intimately?
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, I was always so covetous of that. I had a friend, his name was Willie. His name is still Willie. And he would talk about Jesus like, oh yeah, I was just talking to him on the plane. And I was like, what do you mean you were just talking to him on the plane? And he talked back,
Right.
And so I just always wanted that. I was like, listen, if there is a God and he talks back, I want to hear it 24/7. And in fact, that's still my prayer. I mean, I was up at 4 a.m, like anxious about stuff. And I was so deep in my anxiety that I said, Jesus, I know it's so thick right now that you could be yelling and I can't hear you. You know what I mean? Because it's just so thick all around me. And yet I know that if I just heard one whisper from you, all of this would go away.
You've heard me talk about my new network, Great American Family Channel. It is the place to find your new favorite holiday movies all year around. If you're like me and you love to snuggle up on the couch with a blanket and a warm drink to watch the best new original Christmas movies of the season, then you're going to want to watch Great American Family Channel. How do you find Great American Family Channel? Well, you can text the word Christmas to 877-999-1225 for more details. Great American Family Channel is the fastest growing channel on television where we value family, faith, and country. You are not going to want to miss everything we're making for you on Great American Family and our streaming platform, Great American PureFlix. Text the word Christmas to 877-999-1225 to find out how to watch. That's Christmas to 877-999-1225. So with some of my previous podcast guest co-hosts, do you hear from God? Do you just know intuitively from God? Do you see God or do you feel God?
I think I feel him and then I don't hear him, but I feel like a communication from him. It's like an idea lands. And it's often a question like, what do you think about this one? And so, it's not actual words. It feels like a landing, like an idea landing upon me. Yeah. And often it'll be things that I'm like, oh, I would not have come to that conclusion on my own.
Yeah.
That wasn't me.
Right.
Because that's the hard thing, right? Is you're trying to discern, is this me or is this something outside of me? And if it's something outside of me, is it the Lord?
Right.
And
right, because you want to make sure it's not some other voice or let alone the voice of the enemy.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I think, one of the ways that my friend Willie knew that it was Jesus is that he read the Bible all the time.
Yeah.
So he could go, oh yeah, that's just the kind of thing that Jesus said. So of course he would say it now. So, that's, for me, that's how I test the things that I hear. But, all of this was happening. And I want to stress this. All of this was happening where I was like, Jesus was alive. And I was like, oh my gosh, the world is full of possibility.
Yeah.
And yet life was really hard. I mean, we were, my husband was working in production and, getting a few acting jobs here and there. I was still out of work, working freelance here and there. And we didn't have a ton of money. There were definitely a ton of months where I was like, I don't know how we're going to make rent or get groceries or things like that. And I felt completely lost. I mean, at the same time that Jesus was sort of pushing forward and being like, this is who you are, this is your real identity, that was coming in at the same time as me having to relinquish the identity I'd held so strongly, which was, I'm a journalist. That's who I am. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be Christian. I'm poor, blah, 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 all these things. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think I was putting that up and above my identity as daughter of God only because I didn't know that I had that.
Right.
And so I think he was pulling one away so that he could emphasize the more important one. But I just want to say, like, it's not like, and I know people say this all the time, but it's not like, you know, I got baptized in the ocean. It's not like you jump in the ocean, you come out, and then like your life is all great and dandy.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Of course not.
It was still really hard, and there was lots of difficulty, but it is, and there were lots of times where I would shake my fist at the sky and be like, God, why? You know what I mean? Like, I'm doing everything that you say that I'm supposed to be doing, and yet things are still so hard. Like, what is going on? And I didn't get answers. I did not feel ideas landing upon me.
Isn't it God just to grow our character in that way? It's like, because you have a lesson to learn, because I would like to teach you something, because I would like you to be more dependent upon me, because I'd like to carry you. Mm-hmm. You don't need to carry yourself. And I'd like you to spend some time with me. You know what I mean? Talking to me. Yeah. Even you, that's the thing about God, which I think is so sweet. I think that's the thing that I've really come to recently, is that God is very sweet. He is.
And so he's just so sweet, isn't he? He's just like this, like a teddy bear. There is a teddy bear. There is a lion for sure, right? There is a lion aspect of him. There is the lamb aspect. There's also this teddy bear aspect where he's like, even when you come, I would climb to the top of our little apartment building and I'd sit under the sycamore tree and I'd just yell at the sky. And he was like, even you being mad at me, I really love that you're spending time with me. Thank you so much. Which is so ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
No, but I love that. And he does. I know. And he does. And when you read his word, it's really what I've learned this whole last year. And I keep talking about it. I sound repetitive, but having gone through the Old Testament along with the New Testament, but in chronological order, and you see the character of God throughout the Old Testament, and then it brings a whole different lens into the New Testament. Yep. But he is so sweet and loving. It is amazing. It's been eye-opening. And God's character keeps being revealed to me in new ways. And I didn't think he could get better. And he keeps getting better every time I open up his word. That's why it's living and active. True. You keep reading and you read the same passages over and over, and it speaks to you one way one day and another day, another way another day. Yeah. It doesn't change, but maybe what you're going through or the lesson that you need to learn, it's speaking to you in a different way that day.
I mean, there are literally passages where I'll read again and it feels like a verse will lift itself up. You're like, oh wait, is that in bold? You know what I mean? Or is that a bigger font than the rest of it or something? It's just, I mean, that is why we say that it is living, right? Yes. Is that it really does sort of spring to life in different ways depending on where you are and what's going on. And I used to run so far from the Old Testament. I was like, this one begat this one, and thou shalt not this. And all of those things. I was like, I ain't got time for that. I need the love stuff. Show me all the love stuff. And then I did start reading the Old Testament. I'm still in it, you know, but it has been so eye-opening to just see the heart of God through the Old Testament, which we don't talk about. Exactly. Or I don't feel I'd heard enough about.
And that's the lens in which you need to read the Old Testament. If you're looking to find the character of God, find all the places where he keeps loving and is patient and is so good. If you look at it through that lens instead of just like, oh, there's another war going on, there's another this and that, but you see what he's doing during those wars, look for the character of God and you will you will realize how amazing he is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it constantly confounds our own standards, right? If someone had rejected me the same way that the children of Israel rejected God, here, there, everywhere, I mean, I'd be like, see you, bye.
Totally.
And he runs after them. And it's not like he doesn't talk about it, by the way.
And over and over again.
I mean, he does express his pain and his anger and his hurt and all of those things, which, by the way, I need to see that, you know, he loves me so much that when I say, I don't want anything to do with you, that it hurts his feelings. Yeah.
Totally.
You know?
Yes.
I think, one of the best things I've ever done is to read the Old Testament and to take my time.
Yeah.
There's all the reading plans in the world out there. And I think they're really good for you to, get the whole story. And I'm doing the Bible recap New Testament.
Oh, you
right
are?
now.
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm way behind, but I'm doing it.
That's okay. You're right where you're supposed to be.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. You just go at your own pace.
Yeah.
And just as long as, for me, I have to pray before I read it, because often it's just like, could you just make this make sense?
Yeah.
Or could you give me, to put it in food terms, could you give me an appetite for the Bible today? Like, I'm not hungry for it. I'm not craving it.
Yeah.
And that always helps me.
Yeah.
For sure.
It does. Me too. Always got to pray before I open the Word of God.
Yeah.
To receive it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also just even it feels like it could be in Mandarin for all I know, until the Holy Spirit comes in and goes, oh, this is what that means.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I've tried to read it before. And I always think it's so amazing when I hear people that are like, well, I wanted to know what the gospel was all about, so I just picked it up and read it. And I was like, and you got it? And they were like, yeah. I was like, that's a dang miracle right there. You should be, you should be super happy.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because it can feel hard to understand.
Yeah, very.
Unless you have sort of supernatural help or help from people to sort of kind of explain things to you.
Or the Holy Spirit. Because the Holy Spirit does reveal. But I felt like that too. For so many years, I just felt like the Bible was a foreign language. Couldn't understand it. Until I did. Yeah. And now I can't get enough of it. I'm like, give me more, give me more. I know. So, okay. I could just talk to you about God all day long. And I do think that everyone listening is probably enjoying that very much, because it's just,
I hope so.
There's something when you're passionate about it, anything, it's interesting, but when we're all passionate about God and that relationship and just listening to the joy in people's voices when they talk about God, it's just encouraging.
So
it gives you another day to keep going. So, okay, I'm going to now let's talk cooking, because we talked CNN and faith and all the things. And you are one of the biggest Food Network stars on the whole channel. So how did you get to cooking? What happened?
So in the depths of my despair, when I was like, I feel like a failure because I'm not using my journalism degree. I'm not at CNN. I mean, I'm freelancing or whatever, but like, I felt like such a failure because I wasn't, in my eyes, like, well, that was my identity and now I'm not doing it. So who am I? And so the one thing that I would do is I would go into the kitchen and I would cook. I would walk to the store. I would get things. I walked in LA. I walked down Venice Boulevard to the store.
That's a long walk. If any of you have been to LA, it's a big old spread out city, and we do not walk anywhere. We drive our cars everywhere.
No, it felt like people looked out their window like, look at that. It's a person walking. How strange.
It's so true. There's that old LA Confidential movie. If you saw it with Steve Martin, but it's like you would drive just to the next house. It's such a joke.
Yeah. So I would walk and I would get everything, and then I would cook every night. And then it gave me a real sense of peace and sort of taking chaos and turning it into order and beauty. And I just was so taken by it. And it also felt useful because, I just didn't want to sit on the couch and watch TV all day. So then my husband got me a gift certificate to a cooking school in our neighborhood that I could walk to, because I was not a great driver at that point. We had one car and it was a stick shift.
Okay.
So I was not great at that. And that's what led to the world of cooking. I started recognizing that, hey, I think I have a talent here. And this is something that people can do for a living. And since the journalism thing is sort of on pause right now, let's see where this leads. So I did that program. I interned at a restaurant, one of like my favorite restaurants, rest in peace. It was called Luke. And I loved that place so much. And she taught me, and it was a woman head chef. So it was just a great mentor and inspiration. And then at the same time, I was working on that documentary about the genocide in Darfur, which was, I got to write the words that George Clooney said. So that was pretty cool.
That is cool.
But I was offered a job at the restaurant and I realized that I was like, I don't think this is what I'm supposed to be doing, because I was doing the documentary at the same time. And so I still felt that pull back into news. And I was like, I think I'm supposed to be doing that. Well, lo and behold, when the documentary ended and we were looking to make another one, it was hard to get funding for another one.
Okay.
So there I was twiddling my thumbs yet again. And someone said, you should start making a YouTube cooking show. A friend of mine said that. So I started doing that. And then as I was doing that, and basically I would get like 300 views. I was not making money off this thing. It was basically everyone at my church was watching it.
And what types of foods were you cooking? Was it Indian food? Was it?
It was a mix of everything, because that's what I am. I'm such a mix of Indian, Middle Eastern. I was in California. I'd grown up eating food from all over the world. That was one of the ways that we communicated. You know, back in Dubai, I was like, I would go to my friend's house and she's from Italy. And so I'd eat her food. And then I had a friend from Madagascar, and you know what I mean? So you grow up very verbal in food that way. So it was a mix of everything. And then that's what led to someone saying, you should compete on Food Network Star, because if you do, you get your own cooking show. If you win, you get your own cooking show. And I was like, I didn't want to.
It wasn't like, yes, I'm going to go grab that. I want it. Oh, okay. So then how did it happen?
I felt like God was really compelling me to go. You know, it was just one of those things where like every hair on the back of my neck went up.
Yeah.
And it was like, you got to go, honey, you got to go. And my husband said it and a couple of other people said it. And so I went and fully expected to lose, you know. And in fact, my very first challenge, I served raw chicken to Bobby Flay. So great.
Oh my goodness. Sounds like something I would do.
It was beautiful on the outside. It's just when you cut into it. It revealed its rawness.
Got it.
Not great. But I managed to stay. And, you know, I, every episode, I thought, I'm going home. And for some reason, I kept staying and kept staying and kept staying. And it's funny because I talked to one of the producers many, many, many years later, and they were like, oh, you were the clear front runner from day one. And I was like, well, this is evidence A, not to listen to your feelings, because I felt like I was losing every single time. You know what I mean?
Isn't that crazy?
And she was like, no. Yeah. She said, we had to make it more difficult so that it looked like a horse race because you were doing so well.
Don't you sit back knowing that now and you're like, why? Why did you put me through that? I was torturing myself every day, beating myself up mentally. And yet you guys were loving every minute and knew that I was okay.
I know. I lost 20 pounds on that show because it was so stressful. I mean, I thought I looked good at the end, but I mean, then the stress went away. And so I won. Long story short, I won, and that's what started this food career. And I had my own cooking show, and I started writing cookbooks and all of that. And so that's how I got to where I am today.
And tell me about your new cookbook that just came out. That's a Devo. You have it right there.
One?
Yes.
I have it. For those of you watching. It's called Unwind. It's a devotional cookbook, which is a category I had not seen before. And so it kind of came about. I was on the phone with my manager, who you know and love as well. And I was really upset, actually. I was really annoyed because there was an opportunity, a show that I had always wanted to do. We'd written the pitch, we'd shopped it, all the stuff, and someone else was doing it. And I was like, what in the world? I wanted to do that show. I'm never going to get to do that show now. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, write a devotional cookbook? I don't know where that came from. And he was like, well, that's a good idea. And I was like, yeah, that's a good idea.
Just dropped out of your mouth.
And so we approached our friends at Dayspring, and they loved that idea. And so it's really written for people who feel like me quite often, which is you have a full day of talking to 20 million people like you do and doing all of the things. And then you walk into the kitchen, and even if you love to cook, you can feel like, here's another thing that I have to do. Yeah. And for me, here's another thing that I have to do for someone else. Right. Right. Children and a husband and the whole thing. And all I want to do is crawl under the covers and go to bed. And so this thing that had been my sanctuary, remember cooking was my sanctuary, was now this chore. It was a burden, was drudgery. And I remembered this woman who had told me, she's Hindu, she owns this Indian market in LA. And she said, well, I always pray before I cook. I said, before you cook? I was like, before you eat, before you cook. And I said, why? And she said, well, because I want to be a pure and open vessel for God, to touch the people who are going to eat my food. And it was like light bulb,
wow.
choir of angels.
Yes,
I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's a really good idea. And I found that, my prayers would start with, could you just make this turn out okay? Just don't let me burn it. Let it taste good. Let there be no complaints to, I'm really walking in discouraged. I'm walking into this kitchen discouraged, and I really need your help to find some hope along the way. And so this time, which had felt like something that was put upon me, now became a time of healing, of restoration, of connection, of turning the very kitchen into a place of holiness, right? Because God would meet me in that. And I love this as a prototype for the rest of our life, right? Like we do a lot of hard and mundane things, laundry, carpool, hard meetings, hard conversations, big projects, things like that. If we can start praying before we cook, then we're going to show up in the rest of our lives the same way. We're going to start praying before carpool. We're going to start praying before a tough meeting. And that I think is what we need more of. I think quiet time is great, but a constant conversation with the Lord is where it's at.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I needed that reminder. I'm in my own stress in my daily life, because I have an ongoing constant conversation with God all day long, most days. But
that's great.
In my stress, that's when I forget about it. And that's when I need it most. But that's when, the stress then overrides my own willpower and my own determination, and I'm going to do it, and I have to. And then I'm like, oh, thanks, Aarti. You just reminded me. I need to pray before those meetings, before I get on the phone.
I know. I'm saying it to myself.
I should have done that yesterday. I think some of my conversations probably would have been better.
Listen, it's a learning experience. We're learning and growing.
Exactly. And thank the Lord for every day that we get to continue to learn.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true.
So during this whole Christmas season, we're talking about giving and the importance of giving, how we've even received giving that has changed our lives, witnessed someone that has been giving that's changed lives. And I would love to know if there have been any people in your life where their giving experience has changed something in you, or your own personal giving experience.
I feel like I have experienced so much kindness from people. And it's really overwhelming, honestly. I mean, even, when I was little, when I was 11, I had, count them, 0 friends. Like not even one, it was 0. And that went on until I was 14. I'm not kidding. It was very lonely. And so I think it's just so interesting. Yeah.
And so sad. And now everyone wants to be your friend.
I know.
Even me, I'm like, Aarti, I want to be your friend. I'm your new friend. You don't get a choice
We're already
in it.
Friends.
I know.
We've shortcut to some really deep conversations.
We really have.
Yeah. So we're there already. But I just think it's very ironic that now I'm in a business where it's like, you have 325,000 friends, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or whatever it is. But one instance of giving really touched me. So, I'm just going to name her. She wouldn't want to because she would not want the fanfare. But I was doing a show with Ree Drummond, the pioneer woman. She deserves it. She deserves it. So she's going to get it. We were shooting the show, and it was right when Instagram had started doing their lives. And she's like, I just don't get it. And I was like, Ree, if I can do it, honey, you can do it. So she was like, And she had a cookbook coming out. And I said, how about this? I'm going to come to your trailer at lunch, and I'm going to go live on my Insta, and we'll talk about your cookbook. And then you can see how it works. And she was like, great. So I was running a little late. I walked into a trailer, and she said, what's going on? And I said, I'm so sorry. I had to write down my butter chicken recipe, which is in the cookbook, by the way. I have to write down this recipe, but I lost my laptop and I can't afford to get another one. So I've just been typing it in my notes on my phone. And it just took me longer than I thought. And she was like, oh, okay, interesting. So we do the Instagram live. And then at the end, she goes, what's your address? And so I gave it to her thinking she was going to send me the cookbook. Well, the next day, I check my email and it says, there's a laptop heading to your house from Apple.
Wow.
And I texted my husband and I was like, babe, did you do something stupid and take money out of savings and buy me a laptop? And he was like, no, I thought you did that. And I was about to talk to you about it. And I was like, oh, in that moment, I texted Rhea and I was like, did you just buy me a laptop? And she said, you write good words and the world deserves to hear them.
Wow. Oh, I'm going to cry again.
I know, I'm going to cry. And I hope she doesn't mind me telling that story, but it was
That's a beautiful story.
Thoughtful.
Yes.
So thoughtful. And it wasn't just about the laptop. It was what she said. It was that she validated that I had a gift and I had a voice. I'm telling you, that laptop just died. I'm not kidding. Like 6-7 months ago.
Wow.
It lasted and lasted and lasted. And I did a ton of work on it. And it was that I don't know, it was encouraging. It built me up. It validated me.
Yeah.
It came to me in my time of need. It was so, so beautiful. And I'll never, ever, ever forget it. And in fact, there's a recipe in here and that story is in here. I didn't name her because I wasn't sure, but I told the story because I was like, it deserves to be written down. So it's in the book.
It does. That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing. And I'm glad you named her because I'm sure she doesn't want the credit, but it's too beautiful. And it's always nice to know when you're a fan of someone, when you admire them, whether it's for their cookbooks or their movies or, whatever shows they're on. When you don't know someone personally, it's really nice to hear when good people that you think are good people are actually really good people. So,
she really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How does giving look in your family? Like, how do you teach your kids about giving?
Oh boy. It's a tough one. I will tell you, as much as they know what Christmas is really about, they still do really love the presents.
Of course. Don't we all?
Yeah. But I see it show up in these little ways. Like, Halloween, we do Halloween mostly for the candy and the dressing up, right? And so I was really touched that when we would go door to door, both of my daughters would pull out candy specifically that they knew that I liked. They'd be like, oh, look, there's a Heath bar. I'm saving it just for you, Mom.
Yeah.
Or, oh my gosh, they have lint truffles. That was a fancy house. I'm just going to say, I'm going to save those for you. And so, that way of giving to me is so beautiful that they know the things that really speak into people.
Yeah.
And I've seen them do it for me. I've seen them do it for their friends, whether it's, me coming home and they've drawn beautiful cards saying how much they love me and miss me and that, that they really value me. And then I see them doing that for their friends. Like that's the sort of giving that really matters to me. Maybe I'm when it comes to love languages, maybe that's what it is.
It's being seen. That's what it's being seen and being thought of. And it is a beautiful way to give.
Yeah. And I think that's something maybe both me and my husband really value.
Yeah.
And so I suppose that's what they've learned is that's a huge gift that you can give somebody, that you see them and you value them and you care for them. And, that's one of the things, I was away from home for 2.5 months and that was the longest I've ever been away from home. And it was tough, we're in completely different time zones. I know you know what that's like. And it was really getting to me. I was really tired. It was hard to find the joy in it, even though it's a huge privilege and a huge blessing. And there was a day that I was in the makeup room and I just felt this little prodding. And I guess from the Holy Spirit, like, you need to tell that person that you're going to pray for them and you need to ask them what it is that they need prayer for. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't think this person prays. Like, I don't know what this is going to be very uncomfortable. They're going to look at me like a weirdo, and we still have a whole season together. So I went and I asked him, I said, hey, I feel like I'm supposed to ask you if there's anything you want me to pray for on your behalf. And I put my hand on his shoulder. And as I did that, this like wave of emotion took over and I got really choked up. And I was like, so you just go ahead and think about that and let me know. And I just ran out. And then the makeup lady was like, oh, don't worry. Cause he was like, what's going on? And she was like, oh, don't worry about it. That's just what she does. And I guess she told him some stories of like times I'd prayed for her or other people.
Okay.
And so that kind of calmed him down a little.
Okay.
And then he, to his credit, he went and thought about it. And then he sent me a message with a list of things.
Wow.
And I was like, this is really good stuff. And I went over to his room and knocked on the door and I was like, okay, you ready to pray? And he was like, oh, I didn't know this was going to be live.
I thought you were just going to do that privately.
And I was like, no, I want to do it so you know that I'm actually doing it. And he was, I said, if that's okay with you. And he said, yeah, that's great. So we sat down, shut the door, and I sat next to him and I wrapped my arm around him and I prayed for him. And I started crying and he started crying.
Wow.
And I just tried to be very attentive to anything that I felt like the Lord was saying or pushing or whatever. And we got to the end of it. And he was like, why are we both crying right now? And I was like, that's the Lord. That's God, you know? And and he said, I feel like this burden lifted from my shoulders. And I was like, I know, isn't that amazing? And so for me, I was really, really scared to do that. When it comes to things that are hard for me to give, it's hard for me to do things that I feel like will affect people's opinion of me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not brave in that way. I live for people's opinion of me. And so
same girl, same.
Yeah, I know. You can't be in this business and not care about those things. And so that was an instance where doing something that felt uncomfortable that I did not want to give was returned like 100-fold, because now he and I have this connection on a deeper level, and I can just text him and be like, hey, how's it going? You know what I mean? Do you need some more prayer? Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's a connection on a level
Aarti.
We could never have had. Yeah.
That is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Well, listen to the Holy Spirit. And thanks for, pushing through your comfort zone to do that. It's something we all need to do.
Yeah.
Scares me. Anyway, I'm going to end it.
Me too.
I'm going to end it right there because that was just beautiful.
Let's stop talking about that.
Yeah, we're going to just stop. Aarti, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Merry Christmas to you and yours.
Oh, Merry Christmas to you. Thank you. This was so great. It's what I needed. I love you too.
Me too. The weeks leading up to Christmas are the season of Advent, and it's a time of waiting, something we can all relate to. Bianca Juarez Olthoff and I have a downloadable guide for you called What to Do in the Waiting, and you can get it at Candace.com. There's also an easy place at Candace.com to ask questions, and we'll have a link in the show notes. Until next time, be grateful all day, every day. Hey there! I hope these stories you just heard were encouraging. Would you click the thumbs up button and comment on who you're spending Christmas with this year? Candy Rock Entertainment, all rights reserved.